Today, the story of biblical transformation, knowing these words in Aramaic regarding Hagar, and the story about Ishmael being born. In addition, so that you understand the story of Hagar and the story of Sarah and Abram and Isaac and Ishmael, I'm going to give you the Aramaic name for Isaac. It's not a person. And by the time you get through with this video, these Aramaic words, these scriptures, will be a lot easier for you to understand how the story has been distorted and how you can actually understand a little bit better. We're going to go over the word Goshen, the correct spelling. We're going to go over Elieazar, which is in Aramaic a very different meaning. So let's get started. I will have some information at the end, so make sure you stay to the end. Okay, so in silence, in devotion, and dedication with God, seeking out who you are will define the character of yourself to build your faith, your house, on solid rock, and that no one can ever again determine your existence, your faithful walk in seeking higher knowledge that sets you apart from others in this world. You will begin to see through the veil of the consciousness of those who have not begun the searching of ancient forgotten truths. So the story of Hagar is one of the most not correct stories that has been told generation after generation. The word Hagar in Aramaic means the God who sees me. The word Hagar in Aramaic, H-A-H-A-R, means after time of sequence. First of all, Ishmael wasn't the firstborn of Abraham and Sarah. She had twins, Jacob and Esau, which is, I've proven many times, Yeshua, a.k.a. Jesus. Now, don't click off because you're going to miss some of the most important information. We're going to read in Genesis 17 and 19, and I'm going to explain to you in Aramaic what Isaac means. So, let's read Genesis 17. And God said, Sarah, thy wife, shall bear thee a son, indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. Verse 20. And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee, before I have blessed him, or behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall begot, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarai shall bear unto thee at this time in the next year. Now, Isaac, this is how you spell it in Aramaic. And this is what it means. Will laugh. So, I will make my covenant, and I will establish it with Isaac. Ishmael will laugh. So when it talks about in Scripture that Sarah laughed, it wasn't correctly translated. God revealed it this way to me. I said, who's going to laugh? And he said, Ishmael will laugh. Okay? Ishmael, in Genesis 16, 15, 16, let's read that because I'm going to give you the Latin and the Aramaic word of the spelling so you can understand what it means. Verse 15 of Genesis 16. And Hagar bare Abram a son. What is Hagar? The God who sees me bare Abram a son. And Abram called his son's name, which the God who sees me bare, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar, the God who sees me, bare Ishmael to Abram. So he was 46 years old when he had Ishmael. Ishmael, when you break it down in Aramaic, Ish means he, Ma. So Ishma, Shama, N-I, means he hears God. The L at the end of Ishmael is always going to reflect God because that's God's name. So Ishmael, he hears God. He will laugh. The kings will come out of them in Deuteronomy 30:10 means he will laugh when the kings come out of him. Now, let's go a little bit deeper. What does that mean? Because why didn't Sarah want Ishmael to be around Esau and Jacob? Well, in Leviticus 16:6 and 7, it talks about 2 goats, ram horns. And to understand all the rams and all of that stuff, because it took me a really long time, I'm going to explain it to you. Okay? In Genesis 17:6-7, it says, "And I will make thee exceeding fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee." He's not saying that he's going to make all these nations and have kings rule over the people. What he's saying is, I will establish my covenant between me and thee and thy seed after thee in their generations for an everlasting covenant to be a God unto thee and to thy seed after thee. And I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, and all the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. And God said unto Abraham, Thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore thou and thy seed after thee in their generation. So, Moses' name came from Moshe, drawn out of the water in Aramaic. Latin, Musa, M-U-S-A. Okay? The word that you find sometime spelt like Hagar, the Aramaic, A-H-A-R, with the H in front left off. Sometimes you'll see it as A-C-H-A-R in other scriptures. So let's look at Leviticus 16:6 and 7 to understand it. And then I'm going to teach you what Elieazar and tying in the book of Revelation 11:15 through 19 and understanding Achan, troublemaker of the house of God, and why it's so important with the mercy seat. Okay, so stick with me, and you're going to understand the fountain, spring, well of water, which is the 7th month, and why it's so important, and all the ancient biblical words and information that I think that honestly, when the people broke away from the Roman Catholic Church years and years and years ago in the 1500s, they didn't understand Aramaic. They didn't understand the writing. So they just did away with it and said that Jesus did away with it. And that's where everything changed, because people didn't understand Aramaic and they didn't understand the Old Testament. So I want you to understand it because it's really critical right now with all these plagues coming down from God. So to understand Goshen, that is throughout the Bible, you need to understand the Aramaic words and the book of Joshua, and understanding also corn. You know, they have throughout scriptures about the ears of corn. Well, that means kernel or grain in Aramaic. a kennel of wheat. Okay, so let's look at Genesis 42:1, and I want to explain that, and Leviticus 16:6 and 7 before we go on, so you can tie in understanding the story of Moses and how the timing, okay, time of sequences from Jacob and Esau being born twins to when the third son, Ishmael, was born. Okay, and the timing to go free the people. But Sarai was the mother that was going to be the helper, and the mother of Ishmael, the one who hears God, that was going to go free the people from Egypt. Okay, it's making sense now? All right, let's go forward. So when Sarai didn't want Ishmael to be around Esau and Jacob, the story, I asked God, he said, time sequence of God's timing. And in verse 6, we've talked about this word coming up, and I want you to pay attention. And Aaron, which I've said many times, there's many variations of the spelling of the word Aaron. And it also is, been talked about as the brother of Moses. Okay, it means brethren of sin. Okay, you got to understand sometimes in the Old Testament, when they talk about sisters or brothers, they didn't have the word brother-in-law or sister-in-law. I said it in the Living Water video and the video before when I was telling you that in the books of Jasher and Jubilees that Mary Magdalene, Mariamne, and Jesus wrote, well, they didn't have the word sister-in-law. So keep that in mind. Verse 6, chapter 16 of Leviticus. And Aaron shall offer his bullock of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make an atonement for himself and for his house. And verse 7, and he shall take 2 goats and present them before the Lord of the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. Okay? So the whole significance about the 7th month of atonement, if you pay attention to it, the calendar's off, but in the Jewish and in the Christian, it's around springtime. Stay with me because I'm going to help you understand that, okay? And when it talks about separating the goats from the sheep, the flock that follow the teachings of the world, okay, the ram's horn, and throughout ancient scrolls and history, it talks about the ram's horns, but it also is significant in Aramaic, meaning trumpet, okay? I'm going to tie this in with the 6th trumpet and the 7th trumpet in Revelations. It all ties into Hagar, which is the God who sees me in the story of the importance of this baby being born. I talked to you in the last 2 videos about Moses, how they wanted to King Herod wanted to kill Jacob, not Moses, not Jesus. Wanted to put all of Jacob's sons in the water. So in Genesis 42:1, now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, why do ye look one upon another? And he said, behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get you down there and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die. Okay. Throughout the Bible, the story about Joseph and his dreams, the ears of corn. All right. We're going to break this down because that one scripture right there is also broken down in 1 Chronicles 2:1. Let's read it. This will help you understand the story of Joseph also. So 1 Chronicles 2:1. These are the sons of Israel. Now, it's listing other names, but I'm going to give you what God told me. Reuben, Joseph, Dan, Benjamin, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. I've spoken in other videos that they said that Asher was Jacob's son. It's not. It's Yahushua, a.k.a. Jesus' son. Okay? The goat and the ram horns, the trumpets, horns, written in the book of Revelation, which I've also told you, Jesus wrote that book. It used to be called the Book of Wars, but it's now in the Bible called Book of Revelation. It's tied into the 6th trumpet and the 7th trumpet. Now, God's calendar, 6th month, separate the goats from the sheep flock that followed the teachings of the world. Remember how it talked about Abel being over the flock, the sheep? Okay, this is the house of Jacob, the 6th month. Okay? And Enoch, Mariamne described it as Abel's jail. Okay? The 6th trumpet. Now, let's look at Goshen, why the importance of the plagues and the Israelites were not touched with the plagues. Let's look at that. In Joshua 16:50. In Joshua 16:62, I'm going to point out 2 things that are real important. And Goshen, which we hear a lot about, goes on, 11 cities with their villages. And in verse 62, this word right here, and the city of Salt, which is the Dead Sea, and that's what the word Engedi means, Dead Sea, 6 cities with their villages. So this ties into Leviticus 16:6. Make an atonement for himself and for his house. The 7th month, which is heaven's dwelling mercy seat, well of water, the living water, and the word Gad comes from Gadya in Aramaic. So in Yahushua's time, Ishmael, Moses' time, the 7th month on the calendar was in the spring, and that's when the people were freed from Egypt with living water. Now we're going to close so you understand the Hagar story and Moses. Joshua 17:4. Pay real close attention. And they came near before Elieazar, the priest, and before Joshua, the son of Nun, and before the prince, saying, The Lord commanded Moses to give us an inheritance among our brethren. Therefore, according to the commandment of the Lord, he gave them the inheritance among the brethren of their father. So the word thee is not supposed to be there. And they came near before Elieazar and before Joshua, the son of Nun. Okay? So it means God, my... Jasher 82:34. And all the wise men who were practiced in work came and made the sanctuary of the Lord according to all that the Lord had commanded, every man in the work in which he had been practiced, and all the wise men in heart made the sanctuary and its furniture and all the vessel for the holy service, as the Lord had commanded Moses. And the work of the sanctuary of the tabernacle was completed at the end of 5 months, and the children of Israel did all that the Lord had commanded Moses. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned a lot. Remember, Elieazar means God, my help, my protector. Until next time, always stay grounded in your faith. Look in the description box below. I'll have some information and links, and I'll see you next time.